Hi, and welcome to another episode of Silver Goose Farm Stories. I'm your host, Mama Goose, aka Maria Silva. I've apologized for the sort of prolonged hiatus I've had between podcast episodes. I'm slowly getting back on my feet. I feel like it's just been one thing after another for me this month and a half or so. I've had a little bit of a head injury and some health issues, and now I'm finally coming back into my own, I guess. So to play a little catch up, I guess I'll cover what we've been doing on the homestead. And by me, I mean, as usual, my husband, because he's definitely been carrying the brunt of the farm work and the house load while I've been recuperating and recovering and wondering why these sort of setbacks keep happening to me. But my husband's been real busy the past few weeks chopping up that big oak tree that we ended up taking down in our community workday that I mentioned in a previous podcast. It's kind of amazing to see how much wood comes from one single tree. It's been taking him and my children and me off and on when I'm able to, like stacking the logs that he splits and everything. We were using my father-in-law's wood splitter, but it sprung a leak on the very first day. And so, ever since, my husband's been chopping wood the old-fashioned lumberjack way. I can't say that I can complain about the view. I really enjoy watching him split wood. But, it's a little slower going, and it definitely takes a bigger physical toll on him. And like I said, the girls have been helping stack the logs. We've got enough stacked for this winter and then some. I think we have a cord of wood. For anyone's frame of reference, a cord of wood is 128 cubic feet, a volume of wood. So it's quite a bit of wood. It's more wood that can fit in the back of a pickup. So that's enough wood that'll last us for the winter, especially now that the wall that had been exposed to like the elements while Hank was working on rewiring our house for solar is now back insulated and covered up. Will be a bit more efficient in our heat management this winter. And despite having that much wood stacked up, there's still like this giant pile of split logs that still need to be stacked, but there's just no space for them. So we'll have to fill it in as we use it up over the season. And then our growing brush pile, because we also went around, Hank went around with a chainsaw and I followed him, and I felt very powerful because I'd point at something and he would just take it down. It would just make it disappear. So a lot of the dead trees or big limbs that were growing into things, trimming stuff down that had just gotten super unruly, that got taken out, and we've still have as yet to go around and collect it all, but that'll be quite the sizable brush pile. We're going to end up burning it on our first eligible burn date at our altitude in the old pig pen, which is currently being rested from having pigs on it. They're in a different location. And once that's thoroughly rested and the burn pile has been lit on it, it'll be nice and a good source of biochar for our pigs, and good just to like revamp the soil in that area, and hopefully it'll grow back nice and lush for them when they get back and settled in that pen location again. We've also been going around and harvesting the last of all of the garden produce. The girls spent a couple weekends ago harvesting the walnuts from our tree, and we've also been making some apple juice and applesauce from all the beautiful fruit we've gotten from some of our neighbors and the local farms that we like to patron. In pig news, Big Mama had another litter this week. She had 3 healthy piglets and a 4th piglet that was unfortunately the runt and didn't make it. But she has been a really good mom to the babies that are surviving, and they're already kind of running around and being mischievous and adorable, fine and healthy. and she's just a really great mom. We're really happy with her. We have been having some issues with Lavelle's calf, who is proving to be a very bad influence on Daisy's calf. I blame the Jersey in him for the mischievous behavior, because it's sort of common knowledge that Jersey bulls are the most temperamental, the most dangerous, the most difficult in terms of temperament of bulls. Not to say that other bulls can't be difficult, but Jerseys sort of have this reputation. My husband and I have been having these conversations back and forth about what we're going to do about him. Of the two bull calves that we have, he is the more valuable because of his parentage. Lavelle comes from A2 lines, and Dexter, and then there's the Dexter incorporated in him. Our options are to keep him preferably as a steer, because the worry is that acute mischievous calf in behavior can translate into dangerous adult behavior in the future. And therefore, if we kept him that way, we'd also be continuing the calf sharing process and have him be our beef steer for the next year. The other option would be to sell him, intact or not. That's sort of a different conversation. And then our calf sharing saga would come to an end, and we'd have to go to twice a day milking. We could eventually reduce to once a day, but that would sort of take some time and training that, we have to put the effort into doing. Part of me is super tempted by the idea of getting that full amount of milk from Lavelle. I could really dive into the dairy processing again, and I do have to admit that I really miss like that weekly or bi-weekly routine of like, today we're making milk and yogurt and cheese, and we're just going to empty the fridge of everything. That being said, I'm barely able to keep on top of what I'm doing right now. And so maybe it's just wishful idealistic thinking, and I just really need to take the time off, because truth be told, there have been days where like neither Hank nor me barely being able to make it out there, that are able to go out and milk Lavelle, and then it's really convenient to have the calf, and we just open the gate, or we don't separate them at night if we know ahead of time that it's just not going to work out, and he takes care of her for us, and we don't have that excuse if we're not calf sharing. We also don't get cream, so it's a trade-off. So we're pretty well into fall now. We've been collecting the last of the summer garden harvests. There's like 2 or 3 vines of the big beefsteak heirloom potatoes, those gorgeous like ones that have all the ripples in them and that are the size of your face. And they're just loaded with green tomatoes. And I'm like wishing that the few days that we have of sort of warmer, mild weather will be enough to get them to get that, just like that first blush of color. Because once they hit that kind of pinky stage on the outside, then you can pick them and they can redden on the counter or in a box in storage in the house. But if they're fully green, they won't get red. And then you'll just end up with a bunch of fried green tomatoes, which, as a girl from Georgia, I do love me a good fried green tomato, but I haven't lived in the South for a long time, and there are a lot of tomatoes, and I don't know that I have enough Southern girl in me, you guys, to handle all that. So I'm really hoping that we get some color, and because it would be a waste. It would be heartbreaking. There's so many. I know there's different recipes. Like I do recall that Ma in one of the Little House books made a green tomato pie and convinced Pa, maybe it was a green pumpkin, that it was an apple pie. So maybe if they don't happen, we'll do some sort of experimenting. But I would really love some kind of pink, kind of green tomatoes so that we can store to eat over the fall and winter. We also have been mildly prepping for the winter garden. It's on a much smaller scale than I would normally have wanted, but again, semantics and logistics of like baby and me with all my issues and trying to get stuff done at the same time. So we've got 1 bed of onions, 1 bed of garlic, one bed of cabbage planted. So that's pretty good. That's better than nothing. I'm real grateful to have that in. And we had already planted like fall peas in between our tomato plants, and they're growing really well. Just have to be real careful when we're clearing out the garden of the summer crops not to accidentally pull the peas out. And then I helped my daughter clear out one bed because she really wanted to grow lettuce for herself. I did make the mistake of not putting bird netting over it. And so the guineas, which the ones that we had been raising in the brooder, haven't quite reached that brave stage of wandering beyond the perimeter of the house. They kind of used it as a dust bath the first day, which was a little bit disappointing and frustrating because, she did spend some time prepping that soil and planting the seeds and mulching and everything. But I think it's still salvageable, and we did put net on it. So now, like, what seeds are left, and we can always reseed, are going to have a better chance. One of the things that, as looking back on the summer garden, my husband and I have really noticed, and in terms of like what went well and what didn't, like obviously it would have been better if there was someone that was out there on a daily basis weeding and pruning and picking and like keeping bugs away and things like that. But I can't complain with how much we produced from a neglected garden. Like, we had fresh tomatoes and cucumbers every day. We had pumpkins. We still have pumpkins growing out there. We had beans that are pickled and jarred. We had garlic. We had scapes. I'm actually still waiting on some sweet potatoes to be ready to harvest, and we had corn. So definitely not nothing. Oh, and we even had some sunflowers for the first time that were hugely successful, and our biggest and sweetest watermelon to date, which, I think to be quite a victory, really, because I find melons to be a little bit difficult. So yeah, definitely not a failure, especially considering how neglected the gardens were. I know my husband was out there as often as he could, like trimming stuff up and hanging up and tying things back, but it's not the same as me going out there on a regular basis, like for a couple hours every day, like I normally would have if I wasn't recovering and spending time with my baby. The girls were definitely stepping up. Like, they were out there doing their chicken chores and letting me know, like, oh, today we found this thing that's growing, or these flowers are here, and wow, like, here's the state of this. And it's been really helpful. So I appreciate those responsibilities they've taken on. One thing we did notice was that the fruit flies were really bad this year. I don't know, maybe it was a more moist climate because we had such a heavy downpour of rain in the winter, and then we had unheard of showers in the summer for the first time in years. And so maybe that was really like conducive to fruit flies. And I did notice that some like fungusy sort of blights got a lot of our gourd type plants, and we had issues with aphids. We always have issues with aphids because we always have a ton of ants that live on our property. We are addressing those next year by having neem oil on hand to like really attack everything. And hopefully I'll be more on my feet, and the girls will be older, and we'll have a better attack plan for keeping the garden like growing nicely. The big thing that we always struggle with year after year after year, and this year because my husband was more involved with the gardening, like he was just so fed up with it too, was the Bermuda grass, aka the devil's grass. It was growing up in all of the beds, like nowhere was safe. Our high tunnels are pretty good because we have that really like tightly covered with plastic mulch, but like my husband had put down a landscaping fabric and then like paving stones, and then put my greenhouse on top of those paving stones, and you still have like 3 feet of Bermuda grass growing into that garden. It's crazy. As a life form, I have to admit the tenacity of it, its propensity for survival and spreading, and not just like in a wimpy kind of like, oh, we're here, pathetic attempts, but like vigorous and dominating presence in the garden is impressive. albeit unwanted. So we were like considering like what we could do to keep it out of our gardens, because the considerable amount of effort that we put in is to getting rid of the Bermuda grass. And so like we were like throwing around insane thoughts like maybe we just have to cement this entire yard and put the garden beds on top of it, or truck up like loads and loads of gravel and river rock and just smother it as best as we can. We haven't quite settled on a solution, and I'll keep you abreast of all that as it happens, but it's definitely something to consider. If you guys know of a way to get rid of it that doesn't involve chemical warfare then please let me know. In the kitchen, I've got all the abundance of our harvests and boxes and all the gifts that we've been given from our neighbors, from their abundance. And so even though I haven't been outside in the garden, I've been busy in the kitchen. I've spent like the last few weeks, like my baby either like strapped to my chest or sitting on a chair next to me while I'm going through pumpkins and pomegranates and apples and tomatoes and cucumbers and pickling and fermenting and canning. Like it's amazing. It's a blessing. And it's also exhausting. But I'm happy for the work because, it'll be something that will nourish my family in the very near future. So my kitchen is in a constant state of turnover. It's never truly being put away because another project is starting immediately after one has started, or midway through something I'm starting something else. And it's a little chaotic. It's a little anxiety inducing if you're not quite sure what's going on. It is a reason for me to be up on my feet while my girls are doing their homework, which is a blessing because I'm always there watching them while they're working on their things, and they can just shoot me a question while I'm, elbows deep in some messy bowl of something. And also like the baby has gotten to the stage where he doesn't always need to be like fussed over, and he kind of enjoys watching all the back and forth between his sisters and me in the kitchen, which has really been a wonderful experience. We're also kind of still, this isn't like homesteading related, but we're also getting used to incorporating our homeschooling like co-op schedule back into our normal farm schedule. Like the girls are older now, they're in classes that involve more homework, and definitely on top of our already existing homeschooling schedule, they've got more projects and more subjects to grow in. And so that's been a balance because first and foremost, their responsibilities are their schoolwork, their chores, their co-op work, making sure that they get all those done in as positive of an attitude as possible with minimal grumbling has been an adjustment. I think we're getting there. Like they're always enthusiastic about it because they really love the co-op homeschooling balance that we have right now, and hopefully it continues to be that positive progression. I kind of feel like most of the days the past few weeks has really been at breakneck speed because, if I'm not languishing in bed from some illness or disorder, I'm, running, trying to catch up because I'm so far behind. And every night is either like this kitchen in chaos and kids are running around and screaming and trying to find things. And my husband's like trying to finish his work and then the homestead work all together. And it just feels like we're living in this cyclone of activity. And then there are other evenings where everyone's just had it. And we kind of let the sink be overflowing with dishes. And my husband sits down at the piano and he starts to play. And the girls waltz around the living room in their nightgowns and like use their scarves and dance around him and demand another and another encore performance. I get to sit on the couch with my chunky baby and enjoy all those gurgles and squish, and enjoy a cup of tea and just kind of breathe a little bit. The next day will probably be crazy again, but at least for that minute, it's quiet. So I am happy for that. apologize for my voice and the crying baby in the background. Hopefully that gives you a good idea of where we are in the farm, and hopefully I'll have more interesting news in the next episode. Thanks again for listening. I really appreciate all the time that you take to stop in and catch up with us. If you have more questions, you can always contact us on our email, silvergoosefamily@gmail.com, or our website, silvergoosefamilyfarm.com. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye.